This is a non-scripted video that I just wanted to put out in response to a news article that I've just seen. I saw this on Nintendo Life, but they're linking to the original source, which is a LinkedIn article from Mercury Steam. And it says, there is no easy way to share this kind of news, but today we must communicate that Mercury Steam has initiated a workforce adjustment process. While this is something common within the production cycles of our industry, it is nonetheless a difficult and painful situation. We want to express our deepest respect, gratitude, and support for the people affected whose talent, effort, and commitment have been an important part of the studio's history. Okay, so this is obviously really sad. I was a huge fan of Metroid Dread, and I think they did a fantastic job with that game. I didn't try their other titles, and I know that some people said that their own original work didn't really take off to the same degree that they had great success with Metroid Dread and Castlevania. Now, in terms of how this will affect Nintendo's relationship with them, I have to say I'm not sure it will to a dramatic degree. Nintendo has a bit of a history with not being enormously supportive, in as far as we can see, with other smaller studios that they work with, even if there's quite a long relationship. We can think back to Alpha Dream, who went to the wall, Vanpool, who went to the wall, even though Nintendo had worked with them for many years. And I think ultimately Nintendo do want their partners to do well and to profit, but they're not responsible for making sure that the studios are solvent and that everything is working well. They will make sure that their contracts are in good positions, and Mercury Steam has split for quite a while between their independent-based teams and their teams that are working on Metroid. I've deep dived previously the credits, and it's pretty obvious if you look at the development people behind Metroid Dread that they don't have in the main credits on the other Mercury Steam games, and they don't have recent credits, but they do have a history on Metroid Samus Returns. And this suggests to me that, generally speaking, there is, yes, a core of people who will work on both parts of Mercury Steam's efforts, but generally speaking, there is a dedicated group working with the Metroid property. Now, having said that, there is always the possibility that in some situations you might expect to see Mercury Steam be acquired by Nintendo. Nintendo do go out and purchase other studios, but I don't think that's likely in this case. For one thing, we know that Nordisk Games owns 40% of Mercury Steam. They acquired a minority stake in December 2020, and my hunch is that if Mercury Steam were looking for investors at that stage, if Nintendo were at all interested, then they probably would have leapt on it at that point, even though admittedly they didn't actually have the success of Metroid Dread under their belt at that stage. I think they do want Metroid to continue, but of course Metroid isn't going to be ultimately one of their hugest properties. It's something that they do want to keep going with and they want to do well, but they could potentially find another studio in time and make sure that they have full support behind Metroid. So the specific success or failure of Mercury Steam as a company probably isn't in Nintendo's immediate concerns. All that said, I do think that we are very overdue a new game from the team, and I really suspect that probably early 2027 we will see either Metroid 6, possibly even some other kind of Metroid game, a remake, a 2.5D game, or even a new kind of 3D game following up Other M. And I'll be pretty interested to see what exactly Nintendo do with the Metroid property. And while it's been quite a long time since Dread was announced, and you might think that this suggests that there's gone something wrong with development, I actually just think it's a case of giving Metroid Prime 4 its own time in the sun, and hopefully by the time we get towards the end of the year, or perhaps even sooner, there will be an opportunity to showcase exactly what Mercury Steam have been working on. Possibly, I suppose, Nintendo might want to try to give Metroid Prime 4 another holiday season, but ultimately, given that it didn't exactly have the best sales to start with, their best bet may be to drive Metroid hype in general, and then have Metroid Prime 4 being the main game on Switch 2 that people can buy until the new Metroid comes out. Look, ultimately, it's a very sad situation for any people who are being laid off. It does seem to be something that is a commonality across the industry, presumably as far as I can tell, because people were taken on to a large degree after COVID and the success of the gaming industry after the pandemic period. And of course, ultimately, that doesn't seem to have been sustainable. Whether or not this is something that will ultimately lead to any long-term changes with Mercury Steam is obviously hard to say, but I would have thought that having a contract with Nintendo would be a pretty good position to be in, as long as they can maintain a fairly tight ship elsewhere. All that said, I think it is good for developers to be able to do their own independent ventures and not be too tied to the fortunes of their Nintendo contract. So I do hope that even if their Blades of Fire game didn't exactly take off, they do manage to continue to develop original content alongside. That's all for this short video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time for another Nintendo Forecast.